Very cool.
Okay. The social problem that I researched was suicide. I read a book called My Son by Iris Bolton. It was a great book. I love it. I think everybody should have to read it. After I read the book and did a little research and everything, most of the stuff I looked at was about coping with suicide afterwards. It was a little bit about preventing it, mostly just with everything after the fact. The first statistic here is from the book that I read. It says approximately 35,000 Americans had killed themselves in a single year, and experts believe that at least 250,000 other citizens had attempted it during the same span. Somewhere on the earth, about 1,000 hapless humans were destroying themselves every single day, and in this country, the body count was running at the rate of 100 kids 14 and 19 years of age every week. More frightening was the fact that teenage suicides have escalated by 250% during the last decade. So this book was published in 1983. So I wondered then what's happening now if it had already been escalating this much. So I got this next statistic from the website for the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention. It says that in 2010, 38,364 suicides were reported, making suicide the 10th leading cause of death for Americans. In that year, someone in the country died by suicide every 13.7 minutes. This was really shocking to me. I think this is a problem that's easily ignored by everyone. I think we don't realize how much of a problem it is until you see these stats, and people don't usually become passionate about it until you've had an experience. And even to me, I think it always seemed like a problem that was really distant, and someone else is supposed to fix it, and who knows if it can ever get fixed. But just after reading this book and talking to some people, I've realized how much everybody can make a difference, just one person at a time. So I'll start here by talking a little bit about what can cause someone to commit suicide. In the book, Iris Bolton quotes another psychiatrist who says that there's no simple formula when it comes to suicide. He said that most of the feelings originate in anxiety, and that's followed by deep-rooted feelings of inferiority. Then a person can feel anguish, pain, impotent rage, shame, guilt, and frustrated dependency. And all these are usually followed by a feeling of isolated desperation, which they define as feeling like you're in a dark corner where there's no hope or relief and no one to turn to. All this is just a generalization of the feelings, though. It's usually not one incident or one event that makes you want to do this. It's usually, they said, a collection of events or feelings. A lot of times it can go unnoticed by everyone except the person that's feeling it. It can be something like a simple comment, like the outcome of a competition, just a simple misunderstanding. In the book, I think one of the things that they found out contributed to one of the suicides was just someone didn't know they had to go to work and they were late for work, and it just built on because they got in trouble. And so a lot of times it's something that other people don't even notice. But once the feelings start in someone's head, it just builds and builds. A lot of times they use the formula that people who are hapless, helpless, and hopeless are the ones who will commit suicide. Another quote from the book says, "Sometimes it seems to me that the merest offer of one's love and understanding, the bare fact that we are together, is enough to tilt the decision towards life. On the contrary, some individuals will reject every offer of rescue." This quote's important because it's common for family and friends to feel responsible for what's happened, and you have to realize that suicide a lot of times is a problem of responsibility. People want to blame other people for their problems, but your responsibility of life is no one but your own. Like, you can't force someone else to keep living. You can't take responsibility for what they've done. So survival. When I say survival or surviving suicide, in the book they refer to people who have survived suicide as the family and friends of the person who's committed suicide. So it's like you have to survive after the fact. So once you survive the phases of grief. The first is shock, which is associated with disbelief or numbness. The second is denial. It's when you're saying, I don't believe it. It's when you wake up in the morning and you momentarily forgot what happened. I'm sure we've all had that experience in some way. Also in this, it's when if you walk on the street and you think you see the person, or you think you hear them, or just things like that. Next is bargaining, and that's a stage of desperation. It's obvious, like when you're just asking God or whoever you talk to, I'll be perfect if you'll just take it away, and things like that. Next is guilt. That's painful and often hits the hardest. It's when you're thinking, this wouldn't have happened if only I had, fill in the blank. It's very normal, and this is the time, as I mentioned earlier, when you have to admit that it wasn't your responsibility. Next is anger. This can be anger at the world, at God, at yourself, or at the person who's done it. Next is depression, and resignation. Depression comes and goes throughout the entire process of healing. And resignation is when you finally realize that what's happened is permanent and real, and you have to face reality. Last is acceptance and hope. And this comes when you see that you have to make a decision about your future. And you have to see that your life won't be the same, but you have to go on and find meaning through what's happened. A quote from the book says, "Suicide is not a solitary act. A beloved person thinks he or she is killing only herself, but she also kills a part of us." The book says that it affects us emotionally, physically, intellectually, and spiritually. Emotional trauma includes painful feelings, fears, and longing for the person who's gone. Physical reactions can include aching, crying, upset stomach, inability to sleep, loss of appetite, and even searching for the physical presence of the person who's gone. The intellectual response is when you're asking how or when or where or why, and you're struggling to make rational sense of the situation. The spiritual response is a little more difficult to explain. It's you kind of feel a void. It's like even your soul is altered, and you even feel a strange connection to just life and death, and you're just trying to make sense of the whole world. So at this point, everything's obviously been kind of bleak, but here's when the healing starts. She says that despite our blunders, failures, mistakes, we manage to cope, and to cope with love. There, I've said it, to cope with love. Surely that is a secret bond that holds the human family together. With such a plan, we know we are not helpless. So the healing will begin at home. You should share your feelings with someone and discuss all your feelings openly. You should show interest and support to those who need your help. Don't be afraid to get professional assistance if you need it. You should always talk. You should show love to everyone, but give people space when they need it. The most important part is to be in contact with people you care about and be around people who care about you. So yeah, having someone you can talk to is really the most important thing here. Another thing, the book, it talks about survival, but it talks about more than that. It's finding meaning out of what's happened and finding hope. She says, "Indeed, we find it a pleasure and a necessity to make a commitment to survival and also to much more. Mere survival is restrictive, and oftentimes it's selfish." This is a long list, but there are a lot of things from the book. She gives a lot of lists, and I talked to families who had dealt with this, and so I got a lot of these from the book and made a few up myself, and I'm going to read them all to you. A lot of them seem really obvious about what you should do, but it's just advice, and it's kind of an overview of the entire healing process. It says, "Know you can survive. You may not think so, but you can. Struggle with why it happened until you no longer need to know why, or until you're satisfied with partial answers. Know you may feel overwhelmed by the intensity of your feelings, but all your feelings are normal. Anger, guilt, confusion, and forgetfulness are common responses. You're not crazy, you're in mourning. Be aware you may feel appropriate anger at the person, at the world, at God, and at yourself. You may feel guilty for what you think you did or did not do. Having suicidal thoughts is common. It does not mean that you will act on these thoughts. Remember to take one moment or one day at a time. Find a good listener with whom to share and call someone. Don't be afraid to cry. Tears are healing. Give yourself time to heal. Remember, the choice was not yours. No one is the sole influence in another's life. Expect setbacks. Don't panic if emotions return like a tidal wave. You may only be experiencing a remnant of grief. Try to put off major decisions. Give yourself permission to get professional help. Be aware of the pain of your family and friends. Be patient with yourself and with others. Set your own limits and learn to say no. Steer clear of people who want to tell you what or how to feel. Know that there are support groups that can be helpful, and if not, ask someone to help you start one or find one. Call on your personal faith to help you through. It's common to experience physical reactions to your grief like headaches, loss of appetite, and inability to sleep. The willingness to laugh with others and at yourself is healing. Wear out your questions, anger, guilt, or other feelings that you can, until you can let them go. And know that you will never be the same again, but you can survive and go beyond just surviving. Here's another thing I loved about the book was that she gives you advice not only to deal with it yourself, but to help other people in a situation. So another list, I just kind of compiled this from the book and from people I've talked to and from my own experiences. So it says you should respond honestly to questions asked by the family. You should surround survivors with as much love and understanding as you can. Should give them some private time. Should show love and not control. You should allow them to decide for themselves what they are ready for. Keep the mail and bills and commercial services and medication straight if they ask you to help with things like that. If it's a child who's died, you should pay special attention to the siblings. You should allow them to talk if they ever need it. Some things you shouldn't do. Don't assume you know best. Don't tell them that you know just how they feel. Don't tell them what to feel or try to change their feelings. Don't treat them as if they can't make a decision. Don't preach at them or tell them it was God's will. Don't tell them to call any time unless you're prepared for a call at 3 a.m. Don't ply them with your personal painkillers. Don't stop seeing them. Don't alter the loved one's room. Don't try to find something positive about the death. And don't make a comment in any way that suggests the victim's care was inadequate, if they've been in an emergency room or anything like that. So the last thing here is the most important thing, as I've said, is to find hope after the fact and to find a meaning and to make things better afterwards. You should find a way to move on, but not to completely forget. Like I said, you have to remember what's happened, but you also have to be careful to not make a monument out of what's happened to the person, not glorify their life in any way that it wasn't. Bolton says that moving on does not mean forgetting. It means gaining your freedom through the opportunity of closure. It means giving up being a victim. It means having the compassion and the courage to say, I don't like being miserable. It means getting on with our lives, with relationships, with work and play, with living and growing. It's also important to remember that for every completed suicide, there are dozens that are not completed, and that everyone can make a difference. Preventing suicides, it's not something that you can always see the outcome, like just showing someone love or a simple smile or listening to someone. We don't know what everyone's thinking or what everyone's been going through. So helping someone, it's not always something that you can see. You've done it and you don't always know how you've helped someone. So it's really important to just, show God's love every chance you get. Like I said, because you don't know what's happening. There was another point in the book when soon after her son's death, Iris Bolton and her family was talking to a family friend and psychiatrist, and he told them that there was a gift in their son's death. And of course, she completely, she hated this. She got mad, and it was bad. She just couldn't believe it. But as the book went on towards the end, she came to accept this, and she understood that, she was a counselor, at a suicide prevention center when this happened to her. And she came to understand that once she had dealt with her feelings, she was able to do her job in a whole new way. They started new counseling groups, new support groups, and she got many more opportunities to help people than she ever had before. She could do it in a better way, and she met many new people, and there was a gift, and she was able to pass on that gift to a lot of other people. I saw this, like I've said, I've had a little experience. In December of 2012, a boy from my hometown committed suicide, and obviously it was tough for everyone around, but the very next December, someone from our same group of friends, so it was December 2013, he had a hiking accident, and he passed away. And I talked to some of my friends and my family when I was back home this week, and they talked about, the family of the first boy talked about how much they were able to help their family friends with the death of their son. And I saw that as a gift too. I've had new relationships because of this, and just deeper relationships, and I know we wouldn't have been able to help each other in the way that we were before, and I wouldn't have some of the friendships that I do. So it's important to, as we said, one of the don'ts was don't look for something positive in the death, but it's later, you'll find something good out of it. You kind of have to find a balance. So the ultimate goal here is to eliminate suicide. That's a slow process. Like I said, it would happen one at a time, and you don't always know what's happening. So it can be kind of tedious, but it should all be done with love. And in doing this, not only are you preventing suicides, but you're helping other people. You're giving a sense of hope to everyone around, and passing it on. And it's just important to celebrate our lives and the lives of those we've lost. That's it.
Questions? How many people were at the Iris Bolton presentation when she was here this semester? Anybody?
No, I wish I was.
Yeah. She is the most positive person, and you can't believe it, but you can believe it because she's so real.
I know, I used so many of her quotes, but
she's like 80, I think.
The best book I've ever read.
And she looks like she's, 60? And she literally did a role play and ran and pretended she was an adolescent and made all of the therapists there try to counsel her because she was acting suicidal. And she was running all over the place and slammed the door. I mean, don't fall down, Iris, don't fall down, but she was as nimble as she could be. So she's a great example of people that move on and grow from the process. And, you do need somebody that you can trust that can tell you, well, if there was something good out of this, what is it? Because you have to find something, or it just gnaws it. I mean, from my own experience of losing a son, a baby, I mean, you have to do something with it. It has to be positive. We always have Christmas, we have this little picture hanging on our tree. And it's just amazing to think that Allegra has an older brother in heaven. But it's a trip. And I've had a family member who attempted suicide, so it sucks because you don't know then, how do you ever feel safe? That's what I was talking to him at the conference at the table about, that we're talking about people who survived the suicide of someone else, but what about us that survived attempted suicides, and then you live on pins and needles wondering what to do. So you really do need help, whether that's with just friends or with professionals or both. Anything else? Call. Give her another hand for all of our presentators today.